Greetings, Satorians. I was reading today in a book on Zen Buddhism about the concept of right speech. And this made me think, oddly, of the question of why we are here. And if we can just entertain for a moment this idea that perhaps we have decided willingly to enter into this game of Satori, then we know that we didn't just come for no reason. We decided to do this on purpose. And there's something we're kind of supposed to be doing here instead of just being lost in the game. That can involve a couple of things. I mean, first of all, obviously, if we're going to go play a game, we're going to enjoy it. So we can ask that question of whether we are enjoying this experience of Satori. And a lot of times, maybe we're not. This could be because of the circumstances we find ourselves under, but often it's actually because of the attitude, the mentality that we're holding, the ideas we have about life, purpose, etc. Today, what if we can switch some of those things around, play this game a little more consciously, and see how that idea of right speech that the Buddha delivered ties in with this idea of why are we here playing this game? When the Buddha talks about right speech, sometimes that can be interpreted as a rule by which we should look at life and try to use our words properly. But really what he was suggesting, in my opinion, is that when we speak, we're just asking a basic question. And more so than asking that question, we're just feeling naturally whether our speech is doing good or not. Now, in his case, he was talking about speech as being related to, is it guiding people toward awakening? Or are we using speech to lift others up, bring them down, whatever it's going to be that immerses them further in their ego? It's a little bit similar with Satori, because we can say to ourselves, as I walk through this game, as I engage in my gameplay, am I just getting lost in things, or am I doing it in such a way that's going to help me solve the game, or help those around me to solve the game? And this can be a universal measuring stick. The one question that we ask ourselves, that is where things can get life-changing, because often when we're thinking about how can I improve my life, how can I make shifts, we're looking at this whole host of things. Well, I've got this habit and I've got this behavior, and I'm trying to better my financial situation and meditate more, and it gets very, very overwhelming. But if we have a single yardstick that we can measure everything against, it makes things a little easier, because anytime we're engaged in anything, we can stop and say, how does this measure up against that single yardstick? And here in Satori, our single yardstick can be asking, what am I here for? And knowing that I'm here to solve the game. I'm here to solve the game, maybe to help some of the fellow players around me to solve the game as well. If that's all we're engaged in, that guides all of our behavior. And as I'm sure you found if you read the book, that is also going to change how we treat other people. It's going to change how we look at our self-concept, how we treat ourselves. It's going to change how we approach things like stress and frustration, money, family, friends, community. Essentially, it's going to make us better people when our sole goal is to solve the game. Because to solve the game, all those other things are intertwined. Each of those takes on a clearer meaning. Let's take a friend that you have, and they're having a rough time, and you're sitting there trying to figure out, oh, do I tell them to get divorced, or do I tell them to try to stick out the marriage, or what advice am I going to give them? And then we might suddenly see, wait a second, probably their problem isn't going to be solved by a divorce or by sticking it out. It's going to be solved by having a real friend, you, that sits down and talks with them and listens. And that helps them to see that the lens through which they are seeing their world is one that is always going to create conflict. So in a way, it doesn't matter whether they stay in the marriage or they stick it out. Their life is going to continue having that conflict that they're experiencing because that conflict is built into their current mentality. This is what the Buddha was talking about, right? Don't help people with their symptoms. Let's talk about the deep stuff. And same here in Satori. This game will pull us again and again and again into distraction. Constantly. It's how it's designed. But if we can see past that distraction, then, wow, things get fun. We become better people. We feel better about ourselves. The game becomes a game in a really positive way. So this is a single measuring stick that we can use. Ask ourselves, am I right now working to solve the game? Am I engaged with it in a fun way, in a deep way that's going to lead me down that path towards solving it? And then when you decide, am I going to spend the next hour and a half watching porn? You're going to recognize naturally that's just a distraction. It's pulling you into something. And when you ask, am I going to sit down and enjoy this meal? And spend a little bit extra going along, and here's this restaurant, and you're going to spend a little extra on this meal. If you do it, because it's not really that important whether you do it or not, you're going to realize that if you don't, the experience of fasting and wanting that meal is going to be an experience you can immerse yourself in that will lead you towards solving the game. If you sit and you enjoy that meal and you really plunge yourself into that experience, enjoy it fully, you're going to be deepening your relationship with the game. We will naturally know, as the Buddha said, what is nourishing for us and what is deteriorating us. We will naturally feel what is, quote, good and, quote, bad. We will naturally feel what is leading us closer to recognizing what this all is and what is leading us away from that. Thanks for watching, my friends. Share your thoughts in the comments. Journey onward.